Right. Ready to dive into one of those baffling bank heists in American history? A crime so meticulously planned and executed that it was almost the perfect crime.
Picture this, Barrington, Illinois, 1981, a quiet suburb of Chicago, home to the First National Bank of Barrington.
Okay.
It's a Monday morning, April 13th. The bank attendant opens the vault. Just like any other day, everything seems normal. Then a customer arrives, wanting to access her safety deposit box. The attendant helps her, inserting the key, and the lock breaks. It falls into the box, revealing a hole where there shouldn't be one. And inside, empty. Panic sets in. They check other boxes. Same story. 74 safety deposit boxes emptied. Millions of dollars in valuables gone. But here's the chilling part. No forced entry. No sign of a break-in. No alarms triggered. The vault door was locked from the outside. It's as if the thief vanished into thin air, leaving behind a mystery that would stump even the most seasoned investigators.
You're describing a bank heist that seems straight out of a Hollywood movie. No explosions, no high-speed chases, just meticulous planning and an almost ghostly disappearance.
Exactly, and that's what makes this case so fascinating. The mastermind behind this audacious heist was a seemingly ordinary barber named William Smarto.
A barber. Seriously. It's hard to imagine someone with scissors and a comb pulling off such an elaborate crime.
That's the beauty of it. Smarto was a master of deception. He used his unassuming appearance to his advantage. But beneath that facade was a mind obsessed with risk, a talent for meticulous planning, and an almost artistic appreciation for the challenge.
So where do we even begin to unravel this intricate web? How did he even gain access to the vault in the first place? Banks back then were considered fortresses, especially with those old-school time lock systems.
Smarto and his brother, Vincent, laid the groundwork weeks in advance. They rented a safety deposit box under a fake name, giving them a legitimate reason to be in the vault area. They observed the staff, the routines, the security procedures. Smarto even befriended the vault attendant, learning her schedule and habits.
So he was playing the long game, embedding himself in the very environment he planned to exploit. That takes incredible patience and a certain level of, dare I say it, charm.
Absolutely. Smarto understood that the human element was often the weakest link in any security system. He used his charisma to build trust while subtly gathering information. He also noticed a crucial detail. The vault door was often left open when customers accessed their boxes. That seemingly insignificant observation would become a key element in his plan.
Okay, so he's got access, he's learning the routines, but how on earth did he manage to get all the tools he needed past security? Surely they didn't just let him walk in with a toolbox.
That's where his cover story comes in. Smarto told the bank staff that he was a painting dealer and needed to store large items in the vault. This explained why he was bringing in bags filled with what appeared to be painting supplies, brushes, cans, drop cloths, the works.
The classic Trojan horse tactic. Everyone focused on this seemingly innocent exterior while the real danger was hidden inside. Clever.
Exactly. Little did they know that those bags were actually packed with the tools of his trade, not for painting, but for cracking safes. And he used his own rented safety deposit box as a staging ground, gradually bringing in these tools bit by bit over several visits so as not to raise any suspicion.
He was meticulous, I'll give him that. But even with those smaller tools, breaking into safety deposit boxes requires some serious hardware. Where did he hide the heavy-duty stuff?
That's where Smarto's keen observation skills paid off again. During his reconnaissance, he noticed a gap in the vault's false ceiling, likely some overlooked maintenance issue. But for Smarto, it was an opportunity. He stashed larger tools, lights, food, even a bottle for, well, in that hidden space above the vault.
He was literally living above the bank's treasure, like some kind of criminal phantom. But even with all the tools in place, wouldn't the alarm system be a major obstacle? How did he plan to bypass that?
That's where things get even more intriguing. He knew the bank's alarm system would trigger if anyone tampered with the walls or the floor, but he wasn't planning on doing either. He was going to exploit a vulnerability. The sound accumulator.
The what? You've lost me there.
Think of it as the alarm system's central nervous system. It gathers all the signals from various sensors and triggers the main alarm if something's amiss. Smarto somehow had acquired knowledge about this system.
Hold on, are we saying this unassuming barber was some kind of security systems expert on the side?
It certainly seems that way. Now, we don't know the exact details of how he planned to disable the sound accumulator, but we do know he was meticulous and left nothing to chance. And he had a rather audacious plan to test his theory.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more.
Smarto brought an alarm clock into the bank, set it to go off in the middle of the night, and hid it in that same false ceiling space above the vault. When the alarm went off at 3 a.m., it triggered the entire bank's alarm system, bringing the police rushing to the scene. Smarto, observing from a safe distance, confirmed his suspicions. There were indeed hidden alarm systems in addition to the main ones.
Wow, talk about a high-stakes experiment. But he couldn't just leave those hidden alarms active, could he?
Of course not. 2 days later, he returned to the bank and systematically deactivated all the remaining hidden alarms. To make sure he hadn't missed any, he set another alarm for 3 a.m. This time, the alarm went off as planned, but no police arrived. He had effectively neutralized the entire alarm system.
So he's got the tools, he's disabled the alarms, but how does he actually get into the vault after it's locked for the weekend? That's the part I just can't wrap my head around.
This is where Smarto's plan takes a truly daring turn. On the morning of April 11th, the day before the heist, he went to the bank and asked the vault attendant to open his safety deposit box.
He went into the vault before the robbery. Talk about bold. What was he thinking?
He was thinking several steps ahead. While his brother kept the attendant occupied, Smarto slipped into a hidden space within the vault itself.
Wait, a hidden space? Are you telling me there was some secret compartment inside the vault? How is that even possible?
Apparently, the way the safety deposit boxes were arranged created a small, unnoticed void in a corner of the vault. Smarto, ever the observant strategist, had noticed this during his reconnaissance. He climbed onto the safety deposit box rack and squeezed into this narrow space, effectively disappearing right under the noses of the bank staff.
He spent the entire day hidden in there, in the dark. That's a whole different level of commitment.
It was a gamble for sure. And remember, this was before cell phones and other distractions. He had nothing to do but wait in complete silence and darkness for the vault to be locked for the weekend.
So as the bank staff locked up for the weekend, little did they know that the mastermind behind their impending misfortune was already inside, patiently waiting to strike.
Precisely. With the vault sealed and the alarm system neutralized, Smarto was now a phantom in the fortress, ready to execute the next phase of his audacious plan.
So we left off with William Smarto, our seemingly unassuming barber-turned-master thief holed up inside the locked vault, patiently waiting for his moment to strike. It's Saturday night, the bank is empty, the alarm system is neutralized. What happens next?
As darkness fell over Barrington, Smarto emerged from his hiding place. Equipped with his flashlight and the tools he had meticulously stashed, he began his work. He had brought specially modified stud bolts, precisely sized to fit the safety deposit box locks. His plan was not just to break in, but to replace the locks afterward, leaving no visible signs of tampering.
So he was basically erasing his every move, making it look like the boxes had never been touched. That's incredibly meticulous, even for a guy who hid in vault for a whole day.
It was. Working in the eerie silence of the vault, illuminated only by his flashlight, Smarto carefully opened each safety deposit box. He wasn't just smashing and grabbing, he was working with precision, ensuring minimal damage. He even took breaks to eat, drink, and rest, understanding the importance of pacing himself during this long and demanding task. He had, after all, given himself the entire weekend to complete the job.
This is like a masterclass in patience and planning.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, what was going through his mind during those long hours alone in the vault? Surrounded by all that wealth, knowing that at any moment, something could go wrong.
It's hard to say for sure, but one can only imagine the combination of focus, tension, and perhaps even a sense of exhilaration that he must have felt. Here he was, executing a plan years in the making, defying the odds and proving his mastery over the system. It was a high-stakes gamble, and he was in complete control.
So after meticulously emptying 74 safety deposit boxes, what did he do? Just stroll out the front door on Monday morning with a suitcase full of cash?
Not quite. He was far too clever for that. He carefully cleaned up any trace of his presence, replaced the locks with his custom stud bolts, and hid all his tools back in the false ceiling. The vault, to any casual observer, would appear untouched, undisturbed. And then he retreated back to his hidden space, patiently waiting for Monday morning.
I'm picturing him there in the darkness, surrounded by millions of dollars worth of stolen loot, waiting for the bank to open. It's almost surreal. The patience and nerve of this guy are just unbelievable.
It's a testament to his meticulous nature and his ability to control his emotions. He knew that rushing, making even the slightest mistake, could unravel everything. He was playing a long game, and he was playing it flawlessly.
So Monday morning rolls around, the bank opens. How does he make his escape?
With the same meticulous planning and audacity that marked every step of his operation, He observed the vault attendant through a small mirror he had strategically placed, waiting for his opportunity. As soon as she left the vault, he emerged from his hiding place. And here's the brilliant part. He was disguised as a construction worker.
Disguised. Was there some construction going on at the bank?
Yes, as luck would have it, the bank was undergoing some renovations at the time. Smarto, ever the opportunist, saw this as his chance to blend in. He walked out of the hall carrying bags filled with his loot and simply melted into the crowd of workers.
He just walked out. No one questioned him. No one suspected a thing.
Apparently not. His brother Vincent was waiting outside with their getaway car. They loaded the bags into the trunk and drove off, leaving behind what appeared to be an untouched, perfectly normal bank vault.
It really does sound like the perfect crime. Almost. So how did they eventually catch him? Did he make a mistake, get greedy, and try another heist?
While Smarto's execution was flawless, even the most meticulously planned crimes can unravel. In this case, it was a combination of factors that led to his downfall. A stroke of bad luck, a keen-eyed witness, and perhaps a touch of hubris.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here. Tell me, how did the mighty William Smarto finally meet his match?
Well, the FBI was baffled, to say the least.
Yeah.
They went over the scene with a fine-tooth comb. Fingerprints, footprints, you name it. The vault itself was a puzzle. The alarm clock in the ceiling was a particularly perplexing clue.
The clock he used to test the alarms.
Yeah.
It seems like such a small detail, but it must have given the investigators a glimpse into the mind of the mastermind they were dealing with.
Exactly. They correctly theorized that the robbers must have had inside access, likely by renting a safety deposit box. They meticulously investigated all 74 individuals whose boxes were robbed and discovered that 2 of the names and addresses were fake.
So they had a lead. They finally knew who they were looking for.
They did. They even had sketches made of the suspects based on descriptions from bank employees. But despite their best efforts, they couldn't locate Smarto or his brother. The case went cold, and the stolen millions remained elusive.
So how did they finally catch him? Did he slip up?
Not quite. It was a year later, at a completely different bank in Lake Forest, Illinois. A customer was using the restroom when the false ceiling suddenly collapsed.
Oh no, was he hurt?
Thankfully, no, but when he looked up, he thought he saw someone moving above the ceiling tiles. He immediately reported the incident to bank security.
It sounds like Smarto was up to his old tricks again, using the false ceiling as part of another elaborate scheme.
That's what it seemed like. A security guard investigating the customer's report shone his flashlight into the crawl space above the ceiling. He was startled to see someone's feet moving up there. The police were called, and Smarto, realizing he was trapped, surrendered.
I bet the police couldn't believe their luck. They had finally caught the mastermind behind the perfect Barrington bank robbery, all thanks to a collapsing ceiling. What a twist of fate. What did they find in the crawl space?
A veritable treasure trove of tools. A bottle of water, a radio, an alarm clock, gloves, scissors, flashlights, pliers, screwdrivers, even a jogging suit. It was clear he was planning another elaborate heist.
Wow, so he was back to his old habits. But what about the vault? Did they find anything in there?
Even more tools hidden in the vault's false ceiling. An industrial-sized jackhammer, drill bits, and an electric saw, all presumably intended for cutting the hinges off the safe deposit boxes. Smarto's latest plan had been foiled just in the nick of time.
This guy was audacious. He was like a criminal mastermind with a knack for finding hidden spaces. But what about his brother? Did they catch Vincent too?
Yes, based on the evidence found at the Lake Forest Bank and Smarto's confession, the police also arrested Vincent. Both brothers were charged with the first National Bank of Barrington heist.
So what happened to them? Did they go to jail?
They did. Both William and Vincent Smarto were sentenced to 20 years in prison. However, the judge offered William a chance to reduce his sentence. If he returned the stolen loot from the Barrington robbery, his time behind bars would be lessened.
So he had stashed the loot somewhere. Did he tell them where to find it?
He did. Smarto revealed that he had hidden the stolen goods underwater in a pond. The police retrieved the soggy loot, which was mostly intact but emitting a rather unpleasant odor after a year underwater. The recovered items were presented in court as evidence, and based on Smarto's cooperation, his sentence was reduced from 20 years to 8.
Wow, so he served less than a decade for pulling off one of the most audacious bank robberies in history. It almost seems unfair considering the magnitude of his crime.
It does raise questions about the balance between punishment and rehabilitation. But perhaps the most lasting impact of Smarto's heist wasn't his prison sentence, but the changes it prompted in banking security protocols across the United States.
That's right. His case exposed some serious vulnerabilities in bank security systems.
Absolutely. After the Barrington robbery and Smarto's subsequent capture, banks across the country scrambled to improve their security measures. False ceilings were reinforced, advanced alarm systems were installed, and security protocols were tightened to prevent a repeat of such a daring heist.
So in a way, William Smarto, the criminal genius, inadvertently helped make American banks more secure.
That's one way to look at it. His case serves as a reminder that even the most seemingly impenetrable systems can have vulnerabilities, and that criminals are always looking for new and creative ways to exploit them. It's a constant cat-and-mouse game between security professionals and those who seek to outsmart them.
It's fascinating to think that even with all his meticulous planning and audacious execution, it was a simple collapsing ceiling that brought Smarto's criminal career crashing down.
It just goes to show that even the best laid plans can be undone by the most unexpected events. And sometimes it's those random occurrences that lead to justice being served.
It's mind-boggling to think that Smarto wasn't motivated purely by greed. He was already making a good living as a hairdresser, right? There had to be something more driving him to take such incredible risks.
You're right. In fact, when asked about his motive, Smarto claimed it was the thrill of the challenge, the adrenaline rush of pulling off the seemingly impossible. It was like solving a complex puzzle, outsmarting the system. He was addicted to the risk, the mental game.
So it was more about the intellectual conquest than the financial reward. Almost like a high-stakes game where winning wasn't just about the money, but about proving he could do it.
Precisely. It speaks to a certain type of criminal mind. One that's driven by a need to test boundaries to prove their superiority. For Smarto, it wasn't just about robbing a bank, it was about proving he could outsmart everyone, the system itself.
It makes you wonder what might have happened if he had channeled that intelligence and meticulous planning into something more legitimate.
Imagine the possibilities if he had applied his skills to business, technology, or even security consulting. He could have been a force to be reckoned with in a positive way, but instead he chose the path of crime, and ultimately that path led him to prison.
It's a cautionary tale for sure, a reminder that brilliance without ethical boundaries can lead to a dark path. But it's also a story that captures the imagination. It's hard not to be impressed by his ingenuity and audacity, even if we condemn his actions.
It's that duality that makes this case so compelling. It forces us to confront our own perceptions of crime and punishment, to consider the motivations of those who operate outside the law, and to acknowledge that the line between brilliance and criminality can be blurry.
After this deep dive, I'm definitely going to be looking at bank vaults a little differently. I'll be checking for those hidden spaces and loose ceiling panels.
Me too. But speaking of bank vaults, if you were designing one today, what would you do differently to prevent a heist like Smarto's? What kind of security measures would you put in place to make it truly impenetrable?
That's a great question to leave our listeners pondering. It's a fascinating thought experiment because, as we've seen, even the most seemingly secure systems can be vulnerable. It just takes one clever mind, a meticulously crafted plan, and a healthy dose of audacity to expose those weaknesses.
Absolutely. The cat-and-mouse game between security professionals and those who seek to exploit vulnerabilities is a constant battle. And as technology evolves, so do the methods of both sides.
Well, this deep dive into the First National Bank of Barrington robbery has been a wild ride. We've explored a case full of twists and turns, clever schemes, and thought-provoking questions about security, motivation, and the allure of the almost perfect crime.
It's a story that reminds us that truth can be stranger and more captivating than fiction, and that the world is full of individuals who, for better or worse, challenge our assumptions and push the boundaries of what we believe is possible.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into one of the most intriguing bank heists in American history. We'll be back next week with another captivating topic. Until then, keep those minds curious and stay vigilant.